Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here on this rainy evening. Before we start anything else, I'd just like to recognize and remind us that we are on Ramaytush Ohlone land and that we occupy and operate within this territory on a daily basis so that we know where we're starting from. You are also in the Eric Quesada Center for Culture and Politics here on Valencia Street, one of the only buildings not in danger of being taken over by a restaurant or other crazy boutique store. So this space is a community space, and I mention that because we not only use it for our public talk series here with Shaping San Francisco, but it's also used by many community groups throughout the week, so it's available to you as well. So 518valencia.org if you need a space that's very affordable to do some sort of community gathering. And we would welcome you. We are gathered this evening because Shaping San Francisco, myself, Lisa Ruth Elliott, and Chris Carlson, who's not with us tonight, as the co-directors of Shaping San Francisco, have been putting on this public talk series since 2006. So you're part of the 13th season, and it's a very varied and very interesting set of topics we've covered in the last 13 years. And we invite you to not only tune into this evening's thing live, but I'm also talking to people in the internet sphere. We record all of our talks, and they have been recorded since 2006. So you can go back to our website and Public Talks Archive at shapingsf.org and listen to any of them. You can also subscribe as an RSS feed. So if you want to, if you know you might not make the next talks and into the future, you can have them downloaded and have them available as you wish. And they're all hosted on the Internet Archive for free, and so we're really grateful for that resource as well. We have one more talk in this series this year, 2018, and it will actually be a little different format from this stage and audience kind of thing that we generally do. We're going to have an open discussion next week with the 2-volume series editor. The book is called Movements of Movements, and it crosses the globe with the kinds of grassroots and radical organizing movements that have been going on really since WTO, I want to say the WTO protests in Seattle in 1999. So we're going to be talking about that amongst ourselves as an open discussion next week. And we did have available a number of articles from those books that you can read online. And you can also get the book from PM Press at half off, one of the books or both volumes if you like. Right now the website's broken, so those links don't work. Hopefully we're trying to get them to work in the next week so you can see what we're looking at in terms of everything from indigenous resistance to globalization, summit resistance, and more. And then also Chris Carlson and Joy Sen, who is the editor of those volumes, will be at the Howard Zinn Book Fair on Sunday at 2:15, and they're going to be talking about horizontalist social movements there. So check that out along with a lot of great authors, speakers, topics. It's going to be a great day and really hard to choose where to go when. And then there's of course a lot of books for sale and a lot of tables from local organizations and groups. That's on Sunday. It's going to be just down the street at the CCSF Mission campus. So also just coming up in the last little bit of our Shaping San Francisco public programming this fall, winter, we have a walking tour on December 8th. It's a Saturday. Sea level rise Mission Bay. We're going to really look at what our future may be with that area of Mission Bay, with our, of course, multi-billion-dollar stadium going in right on the edge, and also what the possibilities are to mitigate sea level rise, what the developers are not doing to mitigate their buildings in that area. And we'll just have a really interesting discussion, hopefully during maybe another rainy time where we have high tide and we can imagine really what it looks like to have rising waters. That's what we designed it for anyway. It gives us a little bit of a good imagination starting point. We not only take you all together into the experience of history as a public offering an experience like this. But we also have our digital archive, foundsf.org. Has anyone been to foundsf.org as a research tool? Well, if you haven't been there, or you're shy to raise your hand, there are plenty of things to spend time on. If you're a photo aficionado and you want to see old photos of San Francisco, if you want to get some of our TMI download of history, we have historical essays and a lot of tertiary and secondary takes on events in San Francisco's history. We have a lot of oral histories, and I was there, first-person memoirs, so it's a good way to get a sense of traveling through time through other people's experiences. We do really invite you to not only use it as a space to kill time and learn about the city, but also to participate in. So you're welcome to add articles, add your experiences, suggest people to do oral histories with. We just talked with a woman last week who was a really vibrant part of the lesbian and gay bar scene in the 60s and 70s, and so that was a great hour spent talking to her about her memories. We love doing that kind of thing, so please, point us in the direction of the storytellers in your life who you really think should be on record. And we also have some books for sale. We have also, talking about public art tonight, Mona Caron's poster depicting the Market Street Railway mural, which we recently helped get restored through a fundraising campaign in partnership with her and some conservators, so check that out. If you like, you can buy one. And we have a book coming out with City Lights in the spring, so stay tuned for Shaping San Francisco, a guidebook to the city, really taking all of our tours and all of the information that we have been locating in different spots in the city, and it's all there. So you can take it with you as you go around, or just poke around in the book in the comfort of your home. We are really grateful to Rainbow Grocery Cooperative, to the Seed Fund, and also to City Lights Foundation. They're also one of our underwriters of the Public Talk series. So it gets us to the programming phases and the printing our poster and all of those kinds of logistical things. Gets us to tonight. And then we have some additional costs. So what we'd love to do is ask for you in this setting, which we call a free public talk. Really, that's our baseline. You're welcome here no matter what. If you can contribute something akin to what you might pay for a movie or another cultural event that has a price tag associated with it, please do put some money in the hat and help us out in terms of our tech costs. We have Patrick Sims' capable hands here with the tech booth. He has been working with us since 2006, and we're really glad to have had his input over the years in terms in the topics that we choose, and he's really active out in the community too, so we partnered with him and people in plazas and different kinds of things in the world. So he's valuable to us. Please make him valuable to you too. And also, this is a rented space, so if you can help us get a little bit of money towards that, to make the night work, $150 in the hat would be great. If you can help contribute toward that, please do. And we'll just start here, and no pressure. If you don't have anything tonight, you can skip it and feel comfortable here. So now to get to the topic at hand, I'm really excited to bring together three women, two of whom I know really well and one I've met recently and already really like, in talking about a topic that I also have personal experience with, the experience of public art in the city, in the urban environment. So I was a public muralist with Mona Caron for 5 years. Some of the things that you grapple with when you are working that way are exactly what is contained within this word public. The idea is that public art, or art in itself, is not always valuable just in itself, just for its own sake. It's not always created with the values that we individually hold. It doesn't always reflect those values. It may not, but those of us who have certain ideas, we want to get those ideas out. It's a great way to do it. And putting art up on a wall doesn't also always mean it's well received by all members of the community or the members of the community you're in. So it's really an important, idea to think of public art not only as an intrinsic valuable thing in itself. We really want to examine how public art is created, for whom, by whom, why, and what are the contexts that we're working within. So that's been on my mind personally for a long time anyway. And then we had some things go on in the city, in the country. We've got all sorts of attention to racist statues that are really contentious and have been for a really long time, but we're kind of in a moment where people are paying attention to that and want to do something about what are the values that we as a public, as a community promote. So we've seen statues come down, we've seen the controversies, and we've had that happen in our own city with a, not necessarily Confederate statue, but there's a realm here that we're working within. So I brought Kim Shuck and Barbara Mumby-Huerta into this conversation tonight because of their work around the removal of the early day statue as part of the Pioneer Monument in Civic Center. So they're going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to introduce folks too in a minute. And then we also have, at short notice, thank you so much, Megan Wilson, the director of the Clarion Alley Mural Project, which is just down the street, and I'm sure all of you have a pretty good sense of what that alley means in terms of public art, and has also recently been the target of some hate vandalism that we want to talk about tonight, and how that space gets managed, and how those kinds of outside attacks affect the art and the community and the themes that are being promoted. So Megan will talk to that a lot more eloquently than I can. And I'd like to tell you who you have speaking to you. And as I had mentioned, we will have a conversation tonight too. So even though Megan, Barbara, and Kim are here a little bit elevated, I also want you all to feel like you're part of the experts in the room. But who we have with us elevated tonight? We have Kim Shuck, who maybe you know, she's the Poet Laureate of San Francisco currently, and encourages and promotes emerging Native writers by organizing spoken word events in the Bay Area. She's been doing that for a really long time, not just as a Poet Laureate. Kim weaves baskets and textiles, which is another way that we connect, using the skills her great-grandmother shared with her. She was a member of the board of directors for California Poets in the Schools, and has taught both at the elementary and college level, teaching Native American Studies at SF State, and currently at California College of the Arts, she's teaching as well. She's proud of her Polish and Sauk and Fox, as well as her Cherokee heritage, and her storytelling draws from her own life experiences. Thanks for being here, Kim. And Barbara is the Director of Community Investments of the San Francisco Arts Commission, and I should say that she's not here in an official capacity tonight representing that institution, but that's her day job. She has an MA in Museum Studies and a BFA, BA in Native American Studies, has worked in the educational sphere as well, and has done activism in the Native American community in San Francisco since the 1990s when she arrived here. And we'll hear from Megan later, but I just want to introduce you to her. She's she's a visual artist, writer, and activist based here in San Francisco. She's been a core organizer of the Clarion Alley Mural Project, which we'll just call CAMP from now on, since 1998, and has been a director various times currently as well. In 2003, she curated, co-organized, and raised the funds for the International Exchange and Residency Sama Sama Together, the first collaboration between community arts organizations and artists from San Francisco and the Bay Area and Yogyakarta, Indonesia, designed to foster understanding between Muslim and non-Muslim cultures following 9/11. And I'm sure you've seen some of the art around town, also inside of Rainbow Grocery is some of it.
It is. That is recently started to disappear though.
Uh-oh, so we can talk about, anyway, she's gonna talk more about these partnerships because that's part of the mural creation that happened in Clarion Alley recently. She spent significant time since 2003 in Yogyakarta participating in various community art projects here and there. And I'll have you talk about Bangkit Arise, the project that you most recently worked on with Indonesian artists and residencies in both Indonesia and here. So a lot to talk about, a lot of great experience, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys as soon as we flip over to our presentations. Thanks for being here.
It's a bad idea to put a screen in my eye shot. Just to get a feeling for the crowd, how many people think they might want to debate racism and public statuary with me tonight? I checked now, because I wasn't expecting that one time, and I started my little rap, and somebody just went, you know, statues themselves cannot be racist. And I went, really? I teach undergraduates. Really want to have this one? So that's good news. I suspect there are a lot of public arts experts in the room because of where we are and what this organization is putting on the event is. And probably you know more about it than I do. The early days statue issue has been a rite of passage for me. You know, you go through these things, somebody calls you up and says, you know, they were burning your books, and you go, oh, well, that's interesting. That explains the spike in sales. And then somebody threatens your life over a public statue that you will get removed. It's another one. I feel like I'm winning all of the social arts awards in the last couple of years. It's awesome. I'm a poet and an artist, and I teach. The early days statue, I was involved in the 90s when we tried to have the thing taken down then. For me, and I do have a couple of degrees in art, they don't just let you teach. There's a huge difference between public art and art that exists in private spaces. And there's a particular difference between art that we put in our Civic Center and art that we put in private spaces. One of my first, I grew up, born and raised in San Francisco, hippie Potter mom, just for context. Career military dad, it's a great story. Doorstop me sometime, and I will tell you the whole tale. The first time I was very conscious of a piece of artwork was when Brian Tripp's mural went up. And I hadn't realized until that moment that it was the first time I really felt represented in public art in the city. It was kind of a moment. And some of you know when that happened, and that was fairly late in my life. When I was a kid, I thought the native guy in the early days statues was being killed. My big, handsome native dad tried to explain it to me, and I still didn't quite get it. And I have grown up around that thing because I'm a library junkie, and then because I'm an activist, my whole life, which now is north of 50. And I've become a bit, I'm going to confess here, and some of the people in the room who know what I did around this don't know this. I had become so jaded that I was sure it wasn't coming down this time either. I knew it would come down eventually, but I wasn't sure this would be the time. And my partner had to talk me into one of the events, because I just didn't want my heart broken again. I was educated in this city, which has told me repeatedly in a number of different ways that me and my people and my children and my parents don't matter. And if we do, it's as a lesson to make other people better. When I was a kid, I had blonde ringlets, and twice, I remember, before the age of 3, people questioning whether my father was my father in this city, in the 60s. We We are miseducated in the system about who Native people are. We are miseducated about the history. This is a cop-out, this statue, on a couple of different levels. But the Native community in the city did not get a chain and a big truck and pull it over. That is not what we did. Our actions have been characterized as being vandalism. But what we did was we went and talked to people and continued to talk until they listened. My contribution has been exaggerated. I provide sarcasm and a title, and that's pretty much it. I wrote 55 poems in 55 days on this subject. I am absolutely sure that nobody on the board who were making decisions read any of them. But it did get written about. What I am also pretty sure of is that when the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian came out and had Barbara and I speak, and they were invited to the event, they probably took a little notice then. But to be honest, it is a courtesy that people keep putting me up on the stage, and also because I'm really comfortable at a microphone. But that's pretty much it. I could talk to you about the value of changing paradigms within the Civic Center. I could talk to you about my personal experience as an indigenous woman in the city. But the real expert is Barbara, who tends to get a lot of flack because people think that because she's Arts Commission employee, that she's doing Arts Commission work whenever she steps out of her house. I just have to say, it cracks me up because nobody thinks I'm here teaching for CCA, which is my day job. This is clearly not a poem, which is my other day job. So I just want to reinforce Barb is here because Barb is a fierce activist and knows a whole lot more about this than I do. The reason I refer to the statue as a bit of a cop-out is one of the pieces of feedback I got from a lot of otherwise incredibly educated people were it needs to be kept up so that it can be, it's a teachable moment for people. It's a teachable moment. And I've approached this a number of different ways. When the first person who said that to me, I went, really? Teachable? It's teaching the wrong thing in so many ways. We can break it down. I'm a textile expert, and he's not dressed the way any of the Native people in California would have dressed. We can start there. It's inaccurate. I kept referring to this thing as the wedding cake topper for a marriage between racialized violence and cultural inaccuracy. I like that line a lot. I really like that line. But you see, I provide sarcasm. So it's cultural. It's inaccurate, but it also really lets California, qua U.S., off the hook for a lot of things that have happened, and that was my biggest objection to it as an educational moment. We need to not preserve it as an educational moment because it is telling the wrong story. It says that the Spanish and later the Mexicans subjected all of the California Native people to a lot of stresses and horrors, and then it was cleared out. So when the Americans got here, there was no one left. That's the narrative, and it's wrong. At about the time the statue was going up, there was a really big massacre taking place in California. A couple of years off of when this statue went up, there was a young Native woman who was basically kidnapped from school here in San Francisco. And her parents couldn't testify against the man who had taken her because there were laws that said that Native people couldn't testify against white people in U.S. courts at the time. Okay? There were still people in jail in the Bay because of the Captain Jack's War, Mohawk War. And there were still California Native heads on display as war trophies in Washington, D.C. So that's part of why this is not educational about the issue. You know, it's not just an inconvenient truth that we want removed. So I just want to kill that one now. So I think I've laid some groundwork. Would you like to say a few things, Barb?
You want to click? How often are we clicking when we're on Twitch here?
It's up to you.
How many points you want?
Thank you. It's been a couple of months since we've been on stage together, right? And I have to say that there was a 2-month period where this was quite an emotional roller coaster for everyone involved. It was a daily battle, and even though I am here as an individual, as an activist, and the work that I did, I do have a place of privilege because I work at the Arts Commission, and I think some of my colleagues that are here tonight supporting. But it was a good thing and it was a bad thing too, because the broader community did not see me as a community member, as a descendant of California Native people, and I was there pushing an agenda for a city department when it was really a personal need, especially as a mother of a young child. And but at the same time, I was able to use my privilege and my position to support this effort in a way that hadn't been supported before. So to back up a little bit, I came to San Francisco in 1989, and soon after was when everything was moving and everything flared up around the statue. And I have to say, and I share this with our other talk, that the statue is what politicized me. The statue is what made me the activist that I became, because when I stumbled upon it, I felt what is now called historical trauma. I saw it, I started to cry, I started to shake, I had anger and fear, and all of these emotions coming over me that I didn't really quite understand at the time being a young woman, and it's now I realize what it is. It's that historical trauma that you feel from what your ancestors have experienced. My great-grandmother was a Maidu woman who was orphaned at the result of the militias that were roaming California and taking scalps for money. She was alone and ended up finding refuge in Chico, where she was then, in essence, sold to my grandfather into marriage. Soon after my grandmother's birth, she passed away, and my grandmother, when she was old enough, she was actually shipped off to San Francisco and became a house slave, basically, for one of the affluent families here in San Francisco. So for me to come full circle and stand in front of that statue, it was really feeling the journey of my great-grandmother and my grandmother and what they experienced. So it was something that dug really deep in me, and I was in the effort during the 90s. It was a different era, it was a different arts commission, it was a different city, it was a different philosophy around public art. It was a battle that I don't think we were prepared to be in a position to win. The community was different, the leadership in the community was different. Now what I feel the community has shifted, where the leadership is now very female run, very female centric, and it takes on a different flavor and momentum. Subsequently to that, I was also 20 years later, 25 years later, several decades later, working at the Arts Commission. So I was in a position to spend for the past 4 years really cultivating relationships with my colleagues around what it means to be a Native person today, and how public art affects people from different communities. Part of my role is to fund artists, particularly muralists in the city, through an equity lens. And so all the work that I was doing every day was about correcting historical wrongs and shedding light, providing equity to historically marginalized communities. And I recall, I think my second week at work, having a meeting with my boss, and one of the things I asked was, well, when do we get this statue down? He was for it then, but of course we were busy and there's other things. So Charlottesville was really a turning point, even though there was years spent cultivating relationships and respect and understanding of who we are as colleagues, and I think that's really key as a relational part of making change
people knowing you. It's harder to have a relationship with someone and then tell them, no, your opinion doesn't matter. No, the fact that this hurts you does not matter. So when Charlottesville happened, the community started to mobilize and come to the Arts Commission, and that was an opportunity for me to support the community in a way that wasn't there previously. So in essence, I became a liaison between the Arts Commission and the community, and what I like to call a bureaucratic whisperer in a way. And because it was something we were learning too. We had never removed art in this way. We didn't understand the regulations. We learned, the Arts Commission, we learned a lot, as well as the community learned a lot, on how to partner and how to navigate the bureaucratic processes. And so my role was really to translate all of that to the community to kind of sway their fears or misunderstandings about what was happening. And I think that, to me, made a world of difference in that by being part of the community, there was a sense of trust that was there. So I spent a lot of time communicating, trying to mobilize, trying to make it as simple as possible for the community to be civically engaged. And that was something that was really beautiful. We had people in the community that had never been to a community or a city meeting of some sort, didn't understand the process, actually felt some fear because maybe their experience in that kind of realm was never, they were not empowered, or they were a victim, or there was something negative that was associated with that. So it was really working to encourage and empower them to come and speak. But at the same time, I'm getting attacked from multiple parties because I felt really important that it shouldn't be my voice. So once we got through the process and we were, the removal, I guess I should back up a little bit. The Arts Commission, we had to go through the Arts Commission several times to get approval. You know, it had to go for review. We had to go through this process to make sure it was democratic and transparent. The Arts Commission unanimously voted for removal. We were misinformed, or we tried to be cross every T and dot every I. So we then thought we had to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. That's where I thought the battle was going to be. But again, they voted to remove. So we were set to remove it. I've been working with the community on kind of a very private removal. The Arts Commission felt that it was important the community drove that process, understanding the trauma that was involved with these decade-long battles and what it entailed. So we were planning kind of a secret sunrise removal because that is important to our community to do these things as the sun rises, and then also in line with the permits that you needed to remove things had to be before 7 a.m. So there's some of the reports say that we did it in the middle of the night, secret, stealth, and that's not it. It was 5:30 in the morning. And so, but before we could remove, we were stopped by a lawyer, Petaluma, who has a quote in here somewhere about this. And he felt that to remove was to erase history. That's the last one. So it was really a personal vendetta against him. So because we needed permits to remove the statue, we had to then go to another board, which was the Board of Appeals, which was a long battle. The Board of Appeals, to sit in a room and have the representatives of the community look you in the face and tell you you're no different than the Ku Klux Klan wanting to remove the Holocaust memorial, and that felt that there wasn't enough people in the community to propel them to remove it, and really dismissed us. And that emboldened me that I'm somewhat like him. You tell us no, that makes us a little angry. So the next week, and at that time I didn't think there was a battle. We thought it was a shoe-in. So there was maybe 3 or 4 of us there getting public comment, and we thought it'd be fine. And it was really kind of out of left field. It really took the wind out of us. But then the next week, the community mobilized, and ambushed the Board of Appeals. We took over the meeting.
They had to have known what was going to happen.
No, they had no clue. It was no clue. So the next meeting, we showed up and took over public comment for over an hour. And for this city agency, that's really uncommon. They're not prepared for that type of, they're a non-entity. They deal with food trucks and that type of thing. So to deal with kind of race, tree removal. tree removal, and there was some pornography thing, or what was it?
Massage
A
parlor.
massage parlor. Yeah, it was very interesting, some of the other things they were reviewing. But it was to see 23 community members come out, give public comment, and they had nothing but to sit there and listen to it. They looked very uncomfortable. Some of them one of them started to cry when an 11-year-old boy gave testimony. And they were definitely out of their normal wheelhouse that they're used to operating in. And what was great about that is because we ambushed it, they weren't prepared, there was no one to side against us. But we just wanted to make a statement that we meant business. There is enough of us. The comment was there's not enough of us to fill a comic book and to propel them to remove.
I just want to comment at that point that I told the head of the Native American Comic Writers Association that had been said, and apparently he had one Native comic book sent to the person who said that every week between the time that they said that and the time that they agreed that it should be removed. So that was my little subversive.
So, but then it became a long battle where we had 3 more meetings with the Board of Appeals to encourage them to rehear the case. This also emboldened the entire city. What the most incredible part about it is once we were denied and all of these started happening, every single member of the Board of Supervisors voted on a resolution for removal. So they represent every single voting member in San Francisco, and they said it should be removed. Yet one gentleman who does not even live in the city was able to stop this process for months. So we also had Board of Supervisors coming and giving public comment during the request for a rehearing. So it really showed that the city really came together as one for removing this. I think in some ways it created a closer knit general community, not only the Native community, but the larger community. I think in a way it was educational in that they really saw the inequities and how different races are being portrayed and supported. But eventually it was, it was pretty entertaining. It is all on tape if you ever want to see the public comments. And what was beautiful is every time we went, more and more people came. So by the last meeting, there was 39 individuals, supporters, whether from the Native community or allies, who came and spoke for removal in relation to 3 men who looked very similar, who wanted it to stay. So it was very obviously that through a democratic process, it was in our favor. So they did finally vote for the removal, and we had set probably about a week out for the actual, that was the initial plan, it was approved on Wednesday, we were going to remove it on Monday. But we were concerned because during all this time, Kim, myself, my supervisor, a lot of people who have been involved were getting a lot of threats. I've been reported to the Ethics Commission, a lot, being trolled constantly. There's a fake website about the Arts Commission that's really entertaining too. You can go and look at it. It says a lot of great things about myself. SanFranciscoArtsCommission.com, not SF.
A non-profiteer.
Yes, you're all about.
Cover line.
Yeah. Well, no, that was a pub.
Commentary on a.
That's not on our website. That's purely for us. You're not on our
I'm
website.
not on.
Yeah. So anyways, so we were really concerned that if we waited too far to remove, that something could happen. I just imagined a white supremacist Nazi chained to the statue and we're not able to remove it. Or that people would show up that morning when we were going to remove and create some sort of problem. And so ultimately, the director of our agency felt that the safety of the community was really important. So we did very stealth. We did it without Facebook. We did it without social media, which was, no, we could put it on Facebook. So we didn't want even the news to know. We wanted to control the message as much as possible. So we had an indigenous reporter there. Unfortunately, someone did leak it out to the media, so there was some media coverage. But it wasn't about being secretive or stealth in that way. It was really about the safety and providing the Native community the space an opportunity to really use this as an opportunity to heal. And several people in the room here were there that morning, and it was 40 people there, and it was solemn. There was a lot of tears. We prayed, we had traditional songs, and we had representatives from different communities. We had people, because it was during the Climate Justice March, there was a lot of folks here from there, so we had Native people from Alberta able to come. So basically all 4 directions. We had a woman who from Hawaii came and chanted with us, and so it was a beautiful, beautiful culmination of it. That being said, as this last slide, this very week we have been hit with a lawsuit from the lawyer who is trying to stop it. And you can see his quote there of that we're being biased and prejudiced against European heritage. So this will be an interesting next iteration in this process. My director has been personally sued, but not only the Arts Commission and my director, also the holding company who is caring for the statue now. So Attal. The company is being sued as well as the owner is personally being sued on this. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is kind of the general what has happened and my role in it. And it has been a very educational process on many levels. I mean, people have talked about it. I think we get so tired of talking about it because we're in these talks with, usually talking to people who don't necessarily agree with us all the time. But just the amount of ignorance around California Native history is pretty overwhelming, and why this is racist, and why art in the public realm, and it's Civic Center, there's that other quote about the guy who said the public realm one, that it's a different degree of scrutiny for art in the public realm, and it's not a mural, that Megan's working on. This is your democratic center of the city, and it's upholding the subjugation of one group of people. And for me personally, I feel that when art is being used as a tool of oppression and to promote the subjugation and hatred and violence toward a certain group, then it's no longer art, it's a tool of oppression. So for me, that's my personal lens. I mean, there's several other pieces in the city that the community wants removed, but in comparison to the imagery that this one is portraying, I feel was the most egregious. And also in context, this is the only public monument that has any Native person in it. So this is our hero. You have Columbus, if he's Italian or Spanish, whichever you believe, is someone else's hero. This was our hero. And so the hero has gone to sleep now. That's it for me. Megan wants to next.
So I'm going to ask you a question while Megan does that. Can I ask a question?
Yes, and if there are answers to be given, I will have the mic and bring it to you.
Okay. This probably doesn't require individual answers. How many of you went to school when dinosaurs were all sort of khaki colored and dragged their tails? Right. How many of you went to school when there was no plate tectonics? Right? Okay. We retool our thinking regularly on science, which is supposed to be static, right? But most of what you learn in elementary and junior high school for sure, and probably high school as well eventually, I can't testify to that one, it shifts, right? So these things that we learn about one another, they shift. And 100 years is an awfully long time to be investing in one perspective and not letting it shift. Right? The weight of responsibility on art that gets put in the Civic Center what is the purpose of artwork in the Civic Center? It's to say what the value system is of the community there. And I think that we should cycle things that are in that Civic Center because hopefully we grow and change and learn. And that's as an artist. Nobody said, melt this thing down. That was not the stance the community took. Community took the stance that to respect the fact that somebody made a piece of art, that maybe it doesn't belong here anymore. And you're back. How was that for a good tap?
Thank you. And Kim, I don't know if you'll be willing to or able to at some point. The 55 poems are really amazing, and if you're able to share one today, she might have one. So let's close with one of those if that's cool.
I think, well, let's see what I have first. I was absolutely indignant when they decided that they were going to take it down, by the way, and the funny part was the next day I was speaking in City Hall, and I thought, really? You got the first native laureate of the city speaking downstairs the day afterwards, and you took that decision? That answered me. So that's when we started, but this was the sort of 56th one that was after everything. It's called Shifting the World, One Opinion at a Time. The evening of the final appeals board ruling. I have come awake, homesick in my hometown, tapped sacred songs onto porch wood, onto pavement squares, like a child game, thrown a placeholder to the next foothold and jumped. Tapped sacred songs onto library walls, museum hall walls, city hall walls. The thing we bring here today is not predicted by your security. Cold hot memories, generational, and a terrifying patience.
Thank you so much. So now we welcome Megan Wilson. You all are welcome to stay up here if you like, but maybe you can switch seats with Megan so she can drive.
All right, good. Move the microphone.
And then Barbara, I'm going to hand this to you. And just to say, when the audience discussion comes into play, you'll be speaking into the mic as well. So just if you have something to say, please hold it until after Megan is finished.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to do this at the last minute.
I'm not close enough.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me at the last minute. I'm kind of prepared. And as I was telling Barbara and Kim about the statue, so during the exchange, we just finished Clarion Alley Mural Project, just finished this 4-month exchange with artists from Indonesia, from Yogyakarta, Indonesia. So we spent 2 months there in July and August, and then they spent 2 months here in September and October. And during that time, sorry, I'm always a little bit nervous when I start, but during that time, we had an introduction at the Asian Art Museum. They were our institutional partner. And Alison Wyckoff did an introduction about the Civic Center and about the statue and how it was going to be coming down. And it was going to be coming down in a couple of weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, we were there to paint murals. And it was still there. And I thought, wait a minute, I thought this was coming down. I didn't realize that it was just the one piece that was coming down. So I was very disappointed that the whole thing hadn't come down. Anyway, how many of you here are familiar with Clarion Alley Mural Project? A few of you, yeah. Clarion Alley is just a block away from here. And we are a 27-year-old mural project that started really from the community and of the community. 2 of the artists who were, it was artists and activists, and 2 of the artists lived on the alley. And it started really to get neighbors to come out and connect with one another as a way for folks to engage. And so it started with the group. It was six folks who started it. And they went to Community Thrift, which is on the corner, and asked if they could have the walls on Clarion Alley to paint murals. And Community Thrift gave them over. And so they started to do the murals there. And as the neighbors saw that, you know, this is bringing people out. We are coming out more, this is really cool. This is a cool thing. So more and more of the folks on the alley began to give permission. And today we have the permission of everybody on the alley except for two that we respect and we don't paint on their spaces. So we really came up from the community, and we've always been socially, politically conscious, but initially it was definitely a mix of murals that were more San Francisco Art Institute students, and then the social political murals. And over the years, and as the neighborhood has changed, because when the project started in 1992, this neighborhood was really, really different. This was a working class Latino neighborhood, and it was just a very, very different neighborhood. So we've watched this really, really vast change happen. That, you know, the gentrification, the first wave of the dot-com boom in the late 90s, from the dot-com bust, and then this just onslaught in the past 8 to 10 years that has really changed the neighborhood. And I always tell people a great way to get a sense of what this community, what this neighborhood is like, is to walk down Valencia Street, and you really get this sense of privilege and entitlement. Then take a walk down Mission Street.
24th Street,
And 24th Street too.
where the murals are at.
But you walk down Mission Street and you really get this sense of desperation and fear, and a feeling of who's next to get their eviction notice. And Clarion Alley, so we've grown up in this time. And over the past really 8 years, we've shifted our focus to be more socially, politically engaged. And so our projects, even though we still have the murals that are more graph-based, more spray-based, we tend to focus on murals that give space for communities that are marginalized and disenfranchised. And part of our work too has been doing these exchange projects with Jakarta, Indonesia, because we think it's really important to have these cross-cultural dialogues. So we did one in 2003 that Lisa Ruth mentioned, and that was right after 9/11, so that was really addressing Muslim, non-Muslim countries, cultures. And then that relationship just developed over the past 15 years. I've continued to go back, other artists have continued to go back, they've come here. And so this summer is when we did the next leg of this exchange, or the next exchange, called Banquet Arise. Where is that? Yes. Banquet Arise. So it was supposed to be 7 of us going over to Jakarta in July. And because 2 of the artists are Iranian and only have green cards, we decided it was not safe for them to go. So once they become citizens, we will go back and finish that part of the exchange. So only 5 of us went there for 2 months. And then in September, 6 artists from there, one of their artists couldn't get a visa. They came over here for 2 months. And the way that we worked the project was, it was really about working with communities and who are we going to partner with. And one of our partners was the Arab Resource Organizing Center, who is literally located upstairs, their offices. And we had discussed, while we were in Indonesia, we had talked about, what are the different kinds of projects we want to do with our community partners, and they were really interested in working with AROC because Palestine in 1945 was the first country to recognize Indonesia as a sovereign nation. And, whoops. So we had initially worked with AROC and Art Forces on this mural called The Will to Live, and it features six sheroes from the Arab community, 4 who are Palestinian, 2, one who's Yemeni, 1 who's Moroccan, and this was finished about a year ago. And at that point, after this mural was finished, Clarion Alley Mural Project was contacted by the ADL and the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council. And we were asked to change the mural. They were not happy with it, their community was not happy with it. We met with them, we listened to them, we heard them out, and we said, you know, we understand your concerns, this is public art, we support AROC, we support Art Forces, we support this mural, and you know, all these different changes that you want, that's not the mural. This is the mural and this is what we support, and you know, we respect that that's your opinion. So from then, things continued, we were getting emails every now and then, and different weird things happening. And this mural was defaced a few times over the next year, and then, so we decided that part of Anchor to Rise we would do this mural. It features, this mural has the 100 names of the 199 martyrs who were executed by the State of Israel since the beginning of 2018. And then they decided to feature six of those in the portraits. And the quote is from the first president of Indonesia, Sukarno. So let us to remember that the stature of all humankind is diminished as long as we're part of nations are still unfree. And so then as part of this, as we did in Indonesia, they were doing murals at the same time with the San Francisco artists. So I decided it was time for me to change my mural. And so while they were working on their mural, I did this mural, End Apartheid BDS, which BDS stands for Boycott, Divest, Sanction. So not long after that, we started getting vandalism attacks. And this one, clearly, they're covering up the mouths. Mine was hit. This one is Chris Ghazali. This is of Ahed Tamimi. This one is by Saif Azuz. The Free Palestine is out. So then, and this happened numerous times. So then we would have to, we would restore these. All of us fixed our murals when it happened. And this happened 4 times from when we finished late September to early October. And October 12th, we had this major hit of vandalism that were primarily MAGA hats put on murals, or it just said MAGA, Make America Great Again. This one, not MAGA, but basically, it was all part of the same hit. And they hit 7 of the murals. And then this happened on October 12th. So we had scheduled on October 14th, Sunday the 14th, was a big event to celebrate the 3 murals that were in support of Palestine. And we had a big event planned for this. Readers, speakers, dancers, and so we had to fix all the murals before that. And we were also just inundated with press. I mean, like this. The press was, I got to my site because my mural had been tagged. And I got, on October 14th, the day of the event, I got there at 7 in the morning to start repairing it. By 8 o'clock, there was already a reporter from KQED on the alley. So, luckily I happened to be there as the co-director of the project and be able to speak more in depth about what was happening. And I was lucky in that I really was clear with her that it was very important that it wasn't just the Make America Great Again hits that we had, that this was the Zionist attacks. Actually, we had had 4 of those repeatedly. So within 3 weeks, we had 4 attacks. And that was really important to focus on that. And, thankfully she did listen to that. And I have to say, KQED was the best out of all of the media that covered it, where she actually used images and talked about the attacks. But we had ABC, we have CBS, we have NBC, we had The Guardian contacted us, and The Guardian also was good, Julia Carey-Wong. She wrote about the attacks, but she didn't use images, but nobody else, in the SF Examiner, nobody else mentioned the Zionist attacks. Everybody else focused on the Make America Great Again. And this was also the day of that event. And to me that just spoke to how it just further marginalized our Palestinian community by ignoring the fact that every interview that I did, or somebody else from camp did with those journalists, made the point to say, you need to include this as part of the reporting to get this message out. And we weren't heard. And so the community was further marginalized. And then this is, okay, so then it continued. Then at this point now, this is what, like 7-8 weeks, and no, 2 months. We're 2 months in. We have now had a total of 9 attacks on the murals, and we just, we're fierce. We continue to go back. We continue to go back, but the good parts, what good has come out of this is when my mural has gotten a lot better. I just said, I'm just gonna spell this out for you. You don't like the BDS? Well, I'm just gonna tell you exactly what that means. So it's gotten better. But in addition to that, because we are having to be out there so often fixing these murals, we are spending a lot of time on the alley. We get to be out there and be educators and talk about what this is about, what apartheid means in Israel, what boycott, divest, sanction means, what the March of Return means, who Ahed Tamimi is. That's what we get to do. So this has become this whole other part of our educational programming, is that now, because they keep doing this, we now get to educate. And it still sucks, but we aren't going to stop. This is the most recent. They now have hit the Names mural, which is a big bummer, and unfortunately, it will be me repairing this, and I won't be able to get out there, I think, until this weekend because of the weather. This moves into a whole other thing, and I don't know if we want to go into this. Should I talk about this, Lisa Ruth?
Can you do it in a couple of minutes? 3 minutes?
How many minutes?
3.
There are 3 minutes. This is too long. I think it's a whole other subject that we don't need to touch on. So that's where things stand right now. And we continue to tell the media when we talk to them, when you cover this, you have to. And actually, camp is also, we're badass. We definitely typically are rabble-rousers, and we call people out, and we happily call people out when they don't do things. So, you know, journalists weren't covering it, we are the first to say, hey, you know what? So-and-so did not cover this piece of it. And I will end there.
Thank you. So there's a lot to talk about. We've opened up a lot of avenues to explore. So if you have some comments or questions, it is your turn, and you're welcome to get engaged with this conversation. Is there a female person who has a comment or question first? Thanks.
We'll get back to you.
Hi, I'm Trisha, the Vassal Goldberg. I also work at the Arts Commission as my day job, and I'm an artist and curator and activist when I'm not there. So Barbara and I have a couple things in common. I'm wondering about, taking down the Pioneer Monument. There's this gaping hole in the cluster of sculptures, right? So one of the things that makes my mind go to is, what do we really want to see? Like, as Native people, as artists, as a community, if this is what we don't want to see, what do we want to see, and how do we have that conversation and make that happen? Can you respond to that?
I didn't pay you to ask that question, but thank you. That has been a big, of course, byproduct of all of this. Like, well, what are you going to do? There's a big hole there.
Not just there, but
Anywhere, right? And I think this is an opportunity to really re-envision what public art is and that space. Other cities have something similar that they've done. And kind of kept closed mouth about it until just like, I've got approval this week, so I can talk about it. But we will be working with the Native community to activate that space. We will, first and foremost, we're working with an indigenous photographer to do a series of portraits of indigenous people from San Francisco on the plinth. So the community will actually be able to envision what they think, how they should be represented. That's the first project we're working on. We will be creating an artist registry for Native artists, whether that's North Native American, Hawaiian, Southern, whatever that would entail. So that at the 1 year anniversary, because this also coincided with the first official Indigenous Peoples Day, which happened 3 weeks later. So in October, it'll be the 1 year anniversary of that. So what we are hoping to do is have a celebratory event where we have the indigenous community are able to celebrate, invite the rest of the community in, and really look at it as an opportunity to enjoy not only the victory, but who we are as indigenous people in the community. And then that would then trigger a series of interactive performances that are going to activate that space, probably from Indigenous Peoples Day, hopefully to Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving, whichever form you celebrate. Gluttony Day, Turkey Day. So we're hoping that then that is another opportunity for us to educate in our own voice and really elevate and look at artists and how to activate space in a different way.
Can I make a suggestion?
Can I have you use the microphone?
I have two other things. One, just a suggestion that because all three of you are on stage and you already know each other, I would love to see having a Native American mural on the alley. I know that the Brian Tripp mural, I remember that mural as well. I lived in Lexington for 7 years, but this one, we got hitched, had a baby there, it was part of our community. So that was a very powerful moment. But it'd be great to see something more, right? So just want to put that out there. And then I just want to thank you all for your ongoing work. So thank you for everything that you do for people, the city and beyond.
Who also is curious about something?
San Francisco Art Institute, so I'm not gonna be offended by your comment about, anyway, the difference between that artwork and political artwork. But I really appreciate everything that you all had to say. I wanted to ask you a question about this term community that you all used many, many times. And I'm kind of looking at a lot of artworks in Oakland right now, and there are many works that I think seem to be representing the community or a community. We're using the genre kind of the community mural that are actually not really representing the community that's there, to use that term. In many ways, they're actually disembedding the community. So I'm just kind of wondering, you know, community is not a homogenous group or something, and it's very easily manipulated, I think, that term, in terms of who's being represented and how and why. So I'm just kind of wondering, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that?
I'll start because the best way to flunk my class.
Pardon?
I'll start because the best way to flunk my class is to use the word community, not communities. I'm referring to the people that we're talking about right now. And my students all know that. We use the word as though it's some kind of amulet that somebody else will wander by and make true. I think it's an aspiration more than it's anything else. But I totally I agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's we're a community, a meta community made up of small communities, particularly in the city and for my whole life. I mean, you're talking about the neighborhood that you know. My mother was born at St. Mary of Help. Anybody remember where St. Mary of Help was? Pretty much right down the street, and it's been gone for a long time. There are a lot of different communities in this city, and they're made up of a lot, and they're multivalent on top of that. And a lot of the narration about San Francisco and the San Francisco Bay Area lately has been disembedding people. And I don't know what the answer really is, but I just want to stand with you there and agree. And I'm glad you're not taking offense at the comment about the difference. I think there is a difference. I think there are different responsibilities between prayers that are private and prayers that are public.
Murals? Yeah, and I was using the word I reflect your class. Right, from the communities that were here. But yeah, camp represents many, many different communities, and when we are speaking of it, generally we are speaking of communities. We don't represent any one, but we do focus on communities that are marginalized and disenfranchised. That is definitely part of our mission, and that is who we are. It's the communities who generally don't have a voice. You know, there's so much space and so much room to folks who get way too much airtime. We're there to be that space that I think we're probably one of the only spaces in the city that devotes that much attention to social political work on that scale, you know, and maybe in the whole country. You know, we definitely, that is something that I'm really proud of about Clarion Alley Mural Project. So yeah, and I agree with you. We throw that word around a lot, and it is good to define it more clearly.
Other comments?
This is kind of related to that. I'm wondering how camp made the transition to start creating more, politically, conscious murals and kind of moving away from just, creativity and expression. Was that part of your current mission statement, or is it something that kind of naturally grew up?
It came really at a time, I think we've just become more politicized in the past 8 years. I really see that, and that is also when I came back on the camp, so I will say a lot of it, I think, was the fact that it was part of the direction as the director I was wanting to go, and my interests, but that was also the interests of a lot of other folks as well. But I really see 2010 and looking at the city and how that shift changed in our board of supervisors and what what was happening with the gentrification in the neighborhood, what was going through as far as tech companies, the Twitter tax breaks. I mean, there were so many things that happened around that time that really, and then the buses, camp got into a huge rift with Mission Local over the whole, the tech bus thing. You know, there were so many changes, and we felt it, and our communities felt that, and we addressed that. It was like, no, we need to be a voice here. This is what we can. This is amazing. We have this amazing opportunity that we control one entire block. We can control an entire block of the visual messaging in the city. That's a lot. That's a huge responsibility. So we thought long and hard about how we were going to address that, and not go the South of Market design mural route that a lot of other folks went.
And even bringing back some of the imagery from the first.com boom, the cleaner, whiter tablecloths image that was part of the San Francisco Print Collective's take and interpretation of that time period in the early 2000s. So, you know, being able to kind of revisit themes that are up again. And also, camp is responsible for the murals inside the Redstone building as well. So if you've seen at 16th and Cap, those murals inside, that was a project as well, beyond Clarion Alley itself, that are also tied to labor, tied to a different political kind of sensibility, but also has a real anchor in the community around telling the stories. There's several historical murals there that we love to focus on too. I will say, just to get a little plug for Found SF, we cover public art as a main category in our digital archive, and we talk a lot about lost murals. We talk about the reasons for murals, community murals of communities disappearing, whether through basic neglect or intentional neglect or other sorts of development that happens right next to and so covers it up, or painting over because there's a new owner who just has no sensibility or no sense of context or no sense of history, and that happens all the time too. So we have a lot of stories, first-hand accounts from people who were part of the Comprehensive Employment Training Act in the 80s and 70s and 80s who were being paid by the federal government to paint murals, kind of an almost New Deal style thing during the neighborhood arts program. Anyway, so there's a lot of information there to go back and see the longer history of mural making in the city as well. I don't know, I feel a little ambivalent about mentioning this, but I'm going to say we did have somebody walk out because they were upset that we didn't invite Presida Eyes to be part of this conversation. So obviously this is a much bigger topic. We can't cover it all in one evening. Presida Eyes, to me, has quite a big range and quite a big platform that they're working with. And I'm interested in sharing some of these stories that they're not as widely told or explained or we don't get to have the dialogue about. So I guess I just wanted, in my defense, a little bit, not that the person is here anymore to hear that, but for the record, because we're recording and over here.
And camp loves Presida Eyes.
Right.
Thanks. I just wanted to circle back, maybe if it's appropriate. There was a comment about the mural on Rainbow, and I wondered if you might share more about that with us.
God, I would love to know more about that. So when we started the exchange with the Indonesian artist in September, we drove by Rainbow, and the mural was, actually all the murals from the first project, they never got tagged.
You mean your first
Sorry,
project?
from Sama Sama Together, which was in 2003. One was on the fence in front of the old Southern Exposure Gallery at Project Artaud. That had to come down in 2012 because they had to replace the fence. Never had been tagged. The Asian Art Museum might acquire it. Then there's the one on, actually one of the very best murals that addresses homelessness is at the top of Knob Hill, on the Beau Knob Hill Market at Clay and Leavenworth. Still there, hasn't been touched. And then Rainbow, so it looked great when we took the artist by to see it. And a few weeks later, they noticed that the wood pieces had been taken down on Rainbow. And because we've been so busy just with the project and wrapping it up, I have not had time to contact Rainbow and say, what happened? Where did our, it's not completely, the painted part is there, but it was a mural that had wood cutouts on it that came off the building, but they were pretty high up, so I'm really curious myself if anybody does know where that went. I am going to be looking into it.
Back here.
Hi, so nice to hear the different kind of contexts that you're working with, and I was wondering, in terms of the early day statue, what are some of the ways that representation of it coming down can be used as a tool for advocating for educational shifts, for new ways of talking about that narrative, and really beginning to shift our thoughts and our ideas about the Native population that's here and continues to be here?
It's a great question. We all ended up meeting folks who were working with the schools through this in a different way, because I've worked with the schools for a long time, but it shifted our relationship, I would say, with school board people and schools individually, and it has opened doors for some of that. And one of the things that happened was people were going, well, there's no curriculum. Yes, there is. There are a dozen curriculums. Ayate, for one, put together whole book strings of curricula back in the day. It's just that they're not implemented, to sort of represent more clearly what is meant by Native American community or communities in this area. And hopefully it does grow into that. I mean, there have been fingernail holes made. I'm not going to say there's anything really substantive just yet, but it's definitely better than it was, so it's a good question.
So Doug?
Yeah. No, but just a simple question. Does the early days statue serve any practical purpose?
It's a really good paper weight. I can hold out a lot of paper. I don't know. Ultimately, I feel like my understanding, and I could be wrong, but it's ended up being a subject for discussion. And I mean, I know that the Smithsonian is using it as a way of educating also.
I mean, I have to say that maybe the statue not itself, but the movement around it, the byproduct of it, the conversations, the dialogue, the empowerment that the communities, I don't want to flunk your class. The communities are feeling empowered by a victory. We haven't had it. This is a long battle. There's a lot of other battles that we haven't won. And that goes a long way. And there's momentum behind it. There's goodwill behind it. You have the supervisors behind it. You have some school boards and parent advisory committees behind it. So, and also we have our first supervisor, District 5 supervisor, who identifies as being Native American, who has really been supportive and is using this as a way to address other issues. So I think we're going to see some, a peak in movement, whether it's around the Washington School murals, or looking at a few other public art pieces that the community may want to remove. And there's will behind it. We didn't have that 20 some odd years ago. We didn't have the will of the Arts Commission being open to looking at that. And even within this process, our own public art department, a public art person is not about removing art. A museum studies person is not about removing things, it's about preserving. So it is a different way of looking at it. And I saw that progression even within our own team of how they had to look at it differently and grow and understand the difference between this one and another piece somewhere else in the city. So we'll see some changes, I think, in the next year or so, a couple of years.
So part of the change that happens is that we've reminded people we're here. And I know that sounds really basic, but there are a lot of people, including, I actually think the people on the board who were saying there aren't enough of you really thought there weren't enough of us.
Oh, but through the process, one of them became mayor.
Yes, that's true. Through the process, actually, I designed a thing that I'm calling social activism bingo. Because I've never been involved in a movement at all where somebody in the opposition didn't suddenly discover a connection to whatever the oppressed community was. I mean, notice that for yourself, but I made up bingo cards for this that I at some point distribute. So I think there are some things that always happen. The other thing that always happens is that there are people totally disinterested in the process until a decision has been made and then they want to argue about it. But I think, which, fine.
Why are we upset all of a sudden?
That was a big one. Why haven't you done this before? We have. Check in. It's in the news. But I actually think the thing that works against indigenous people more than anything else is invisibility. And we look like other things. The fact that my sons are also Asian and Hawaiian don't make them less indigenous. But they don't look like the statue. So as we're arguing in the point of what about the statue and what's wrong with it, what was problematic about it, we managed to touch on issues of a difference between culture and phenotype that people still seem to be deeply confused about. And it's real. So there's been some shift. And I think it's substantial, and I also think that it's really important. We kind of passed over it really quickly. Back in the day, the leadership for indigenous communities in the San Francisco Bay Area was a lot of former AIM guys. And I'm not going to critique them. They had a real purpose for the things that they were fighting, but the fights had changed by that point. The arguments had changed and the skill set is different. And this time, every time we had a big meeting, there were 8 women there. And we had different skill sets, including cooperation, which is the most sarcastic thing I'm going to say about the boys. Because frankly, I wouldn't have a job for most of my career if they hadn't existed, and there were a lot of fights that they had and we didn't have to have, right? But that's just real, that the approach that we took changed things a lot and really, really created a powerful place. So, I mean, now the big push, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not even focusing on removing more art. People seem to be concerned that I'm coming to take their artwork. I'm an artist, My big degree is in studio art. It's painful for me that there was no way to recontextualize that. I participated in trying to recontextualize it in the 90s, and that didn't work. I was at a thing that I didn't even know there was a problematic mural at, and somebody came up to me and went, "Are you here to look at our mural?" I'm like, "Just here to listen to the speakers." So, part of it too is that there's a little recognition that there's some power, and that makes a big change.
So we have a question from Patrick.
It's more of a comment because a few years ago I was watching a Canadian broadcast educational program, and were giving me like saying numbers of Native people that were here before. And watching this program, I learned that there's about 1 million in Canada, 5 million in the US, and about 75 million in South America. And by the time the second wave after Columbus, most of them were dead. But even if you read an American or most US history books in grammar school or high school, it seems like there's only a couple thousand people who were just spread out all across the land.
Right.
So, just so the food.
There were six. There were six. It was, and I turned this one. No, you turned.
There were 6 of us.
We were allowed.
So, yeah, no, the mythology of the empty virgin territory thing is it's pretty big. And if that's not the argument, then it's this Pocahontas as princess of the United States who is now given permission through marriage to, I mean, the narratives go in all directions. But yeah, miseducation is pretty epic. San Francisco Bay Area is one of the largest populations, and it is the largest diverse population. It's not the largest, it's not the most diverse, but it's the largest that's both big and diverse. It was an endpoint for the relocation project. And so we're actually a pretty huge population. And unfortunately, my next project is about missing and murdered indigenous women. That's what I'm working on right now. For whatever good it does, I mean, one thing that it did, when I decided to be a poet, I took my parents out for lunch. And we sat over a table having Chinese food. And I told them, Mom, Dad, I just need to let you know, I'm a poet. I did. And my father said, this has got to be on your side of the family. Because nobody on my side of the family's ever done anything like that. And my mother said, I knew I shouldn't have indulged your Seuss habit so early. And my father and I didn't speak to each other for a really long time. I'm making a joke about it, but it was a painful rift in the family. It bothered everybody. Dad wanted me to be a scientist. My grandfather wanted me to be a lawyer. And while I was writing the statue poems, my father called me up and said, I never liked that you're a poet. Yeah, Dad, made that pretty clear. He goes, I get it. You make prayers. Had to wait until after I was 50. He finally came around. So there are little battles that we won with these things as well. Some kind of recognition. It's all important.
Any last thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the person who started this lawsuit, and how was this person able to, is it just a question of having so much money that you are able to throw up legal roadblocks, or, because, like, if you've ever tried to fight a parking ticket and it doesn't matter how unjust it is, you don't stand a chance, but somehow the entire Board of Supervisors votes unanimously to do something, and this guy says, I object, and suddenly they have to listen to him? Why?
So this is an example of what is called white privilege. It was every meeting we saw that. He happens to be a lawyer. He's not a very good lawyer. We saw that in action in the hearings. He has a vendetta for this. He's passionate about it. It's something that he wants to do. I think there's some mental health issues involved in it as well. He does have a couple of clones that followed him around, so I think they turned them out in Petaluma, I don't know. But this is also a conversation in the city government as well about the ability of a non-resident to kind of pull this type of thing in. And I know there are some supervisors looking at some changes in our legislations to prevent that, but anyone can bring a lawsuit. It doesn't mean there's validity to it. So he was able to dispute it. He had the time and wherewithal to do it. everyone had to listen to it, and he's able to do a lawsuit too. Whether or not he's successful is another story. Whether or not he's actually able to pursue it or go through with suing other individuals, we'll have to see. We're fortunate as the Arts Commission and the director to have legal representation. It's the contractor, the poor person who's having to take care of this, who does not. So I mean, it's very unfair, and I mean he had threatened to at one point sue not only those but more individuals. I'm actually surprised I wasn't sued. You're probably surprised too. I don't know. Who knows? Everyone here may be sued just for being listening to this article. So yeah, so you can find out where he lives. His address is on the list.
So just to clarify, all of the suits that have been brought against the individuals you mentioned are by this one person?
By this one individual. Who was quoted, who we did hear, who, through the process, he was very proud of his lineage, that he is a descendant of the California militia that used to hang people and basically were part of the people that had hunted the native individuals. He went on record to say how proud he was of that lineage. So through the many, many testimonies where he was referred to as a white supremacist and a old white privileged man, on and on, many iterations of that, he went on record, it's like, I've been called a white supremacist, I've been called a racist, the worst thing I've been called is old. So that is his mentality.
Well, thank you for being here tonight, for thinking this through with all of us, and for your comments and questions, and for everything you brought to the conversation as well, all three of you. I would just like to say there's the Howardson Book Fair on Sunday, which also people are grappling with a lot of similar ideas in some of the sessions, so check that out. And the night before, on Saturday, there's a conversation on Black feminism, politics, and liberation with a woman who sat here a couple months ago, Zoe Samudzi, and another woman, Kianga Yamata Taylor, and poetry by Idrissa Simmons. So that's over in Oakland the night before, but it's really kind of connected to the Howardson Book Fair, and there's flyers over there. And come walk with us through the city and talk about Mission Bay and the future of actually the whole of San Francisco as we confront the coming years of sea level rise, which may come more quickly than projected. So it's a conversation we should really all be having and understand, so we would be happy to walk with you. And come back again. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Lisa?